was diagnosed with a glioblastoma, class 4. It's inoperable, so it's in the section of my midbrain that, at least for now, does not permit surgery. And we've been fighting it with radiation and chemotherapy because of that. I first saw my doctor on July 30th or 31st, and then the real diagnosis came a few weeks later in August. I was experiencing very mild symptoms, a little bit of tingling in my right hand, a little bit in my right foot. When I walked from the Port Authority bus terminal here in New York to the office, about a 15 to 20-minute walk, I noticed a little weakness in my leg that I'd never seen before. So I went to see my normal internist, who's a cardiologist by training. He's not a neurologist, but when I described my symptoms to him, thinking they were Lyme disease or some kind of minor circulatory problem, he suggested I get a brain scan, and it led from there to the ultimate diagnosis of the tumor. We first got the diagnosis that there was a growth, likely a cancerous tumor, but we weren't sure that it was that. All kinds of thoughts go through your mind at that point as to whether, is it cancer, is it some kind of infection, is it something else? The way that I work, I don't think that much about why things happen. I think more about, well, they are, and what are we going to do about them? So from the outset of receiving the diagnosis initially that there was a growth, to a few weeks later after a biopsy was done where it was able to be confirmed that it was cancerous, I just my reaction was, okay, what's the next step here? I have a cousin of mine who immediately recommended a medical team at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital here in New York City, and saw them within a couple of days after the initial scan that we had at the end of July. And I've been under their treatment since then. So I've looked at a lot of things that a lot of people have sent me, but I haven't done my own scan through the internet. That's not, I don't think for me, wouldn't be the best way to go. When I went to my doctor that day in late July, it's a doctor in New Jersey where I grew up, and then he sent me to a local hospital to do a CAT scan and an MRI. The time frame from when I saw the doctor until I got the news that there was a tumor was about 4 hours, all told, because they were able to do it quickly. I didn't have any family with me other than after a CAT scan was done that showed an irregularity, they immediately asked me to do an MRI. At that point, I got a hold of my brother, David, who happens to live nearby this hospital in New Jersey. He came over essentially right at the time that the neurologist told me about the growth. And then my wife came later. So I didn't have a lot of family. It was essentially me, David, and then ultimately Diane. When we learned later, a few weeks later, about once the biopsy had been done and what the nature of it was, then I had a chance to have family around. And it was kind of in a little bit of a process, because initially, right after the biopsy, which took a while before they could do a biopsy, but right after the biopsy, the initial thought was that it was a grade 3 tumor. And then after they did further analysis is when they determined that it was a grade 4. So that information came even a little bit later than the biopsy. And my oldest daughter Margie, and my wife Diane were with me then. And it's not easy to hear that news. You have certain expectations, and then you hear that it's going to be a tougher fight. But I was glad that I had both Diane and Margie with me, that we were all together when we got that news. As far as I was told, I don't think grade 1 exists. Brain tumors are classified as grade 2, grade 3, and grade 4, with grade 2 being the least aggressive and grade 4 being the most aggressive. So it was initially sort of estimated that mine would be a grade 3. The initial reports from the biopsy seemed to confirm that. When it turned out that they did further analysis of the biopsy, it was a more aggressive tumor than was expected, and in the category of the most aggressive tumors. I've been fortunate that my sleeping patterns haven't been affected and I haven't had any major side effects, so in that sense I really haven't had to change things. I've also been very fortunate that my mental processes have not been at all affected, so I've been able to work close to full time. I mean, I have to attend to my medical needs, my doctor's appointments and things like that. I would say the biggest change is that I do have symptoms on the right side of my body, some tightness running really from my toes up to my ear, and it's affected my balance a little bit in terms of ability to exercise and ability to engage in recreational activities and things that I used to enjoy. I can't ride a bicycle the way that I used to. I can't play tennis. I can't, I can't play, have a catch with my little nephews or something like that. But overall, I've been quite fortunate. And as far as professionally, I've done everything that I've needed to do at my job really since I've been diagnosed. Well, from a pharmaceutical standpoint, I'm on Temodar, which was a form of chemotherapy, and I just recently went on Avastin, which is a second form of intravenous medication, and I take other maintenance drugs throughout my regimen as well, and I've been very fortunate not to have much side effects from that. From a nutrition standpoint, a very dear friend of mine who's an oncologist at the University of Rochester recommended a book to me called Anti-Cancer, written by a PhD MD who had a brain tumor. And his attitude, I thought it was a very balanced book and a very, therefore, convincing book to me, because he says you got to do all the traditional medical stuff. But he also then went through, both from a lifestyle and attitude standpoint, but from a nutritional standpoint, scientific basis for modifying what you're doing. And on the nutritional side, what it basically came down to was tumors feed on sugar, so cut down on refined white sugar. Tumors feed on white flour, so eliminate refined white flour. Reduce or eliminate the amount of meat that you eat other than some organic chicken. I can eat seafood and fish, and cut out alcohol. And that's the way I sort of process the message of this book, and that's what I've been doing. I can't say that I haven't cheated every once in a while and had a piece of birthday cake or, something like that, but I've modified my diet to that, figuring you give yourself whatever chance that you can to do the best you can. I think absolute honesty is most important. There may be a tendency to try to sugarcoat or to try to put things a certain way, but as hard as it can be, I think the best thing to do with your loved ones, family, friends, is to tell them exactly what the situation is and to answer the questions that they have. Second, and this is based on what a lot of people have told me, but it seems to be the case, is a lot of people have said, I feel much better, Mike, when I'm with you than when I'm not. And what that means is, taking the time to spend time with your loved ones, whether that's family, whether that's friends, whether it's whomever it is. There are times when you might say to yourself, I don't feel like I'm up to doing that, but my experience is it's always paid off for me, and whenever I have a conversation with a family member or a friend about my condition, they feel better about it, they feel like they know more about it, and it's very energizing to me as well. So I would say, one, be brutally honest, even if the news isn't always good, and by definition, the news can't always be good. And two, don't underestimate the power of face-to-face, to being with the people that you love and having a chance to share some time with them. Well, first off, I've been very fortunate to be able to have a lot of family and friends that have been very gracious to me, but I've seen the spectrum there. There are some people who, they just want to hear everything's going well. Everything's okay, Mike. Everything's going great, great. Glad to hear it, and they don't want to hear any more specifics, and that's fine with me. There are other people who really want to engage at a deeper level and really understand not only what is going on medically, but how are you coping with it? How are you feeling about that? And my experience, I don't know if it's everybody's experience, is I welcome those conversations. They're very enriching to me. They make me think. I know that they come from the heart of the individual that I'm speaking with, and it's a wonderful thing. So I think it's important for, the patient, if that's the right term, the person in my condition or the person that has the condition, to and you will be able to do it, to distinguish between people who love you, but their capacity at that particular moment in time is just to hear the surface, and other people who love you just as much, but really want to delve further into it. And my suggestion is, you may think, I don't want to delve into it, but my experience has been, those are very meaningful conversations. I'm Jewish. I'm not the most observant Jewish person in the world, but I've always been an active member of our temple. And when something like this happens, it's natural that you turn to spirituality. I've done some reading. I've had some conversations with Rabbi Ellen Lewis, the rabbi at our temple, and I find I do a lot of reading. I always was a big reader, but I read maybe a little bit more intently than I did, and I find, whether it's spirituality, whether it's meaning, whether you want to call it beauty, whatever, but I find I find those kinds of things more frequently in areas of reading and discussion with people that you might not have thought about when you have this. But spirituality, in the broadest sense, has been important to me. Well, in terms of my immediate family, it's my wife, Diane, and then my three daughters, Margie, who's 22, Grace, who's 20, and Sally, who's 16. Diane likes to say, guy with three daughters is the luckiest guy in the world, and in a sense, she's right. They've been all great individually in terms of their support, their love, their affection, their assistance with whatever I need. But what's been incredibly gratifying to me is to see the way the three of them have supported one another. They always had a tight bond. Sisters, we're fortunate that these sisters always got along very well, sometimes a little better than others, but they've really come together to support one another. And there's very little that can be more gratifying for parents than to see that. So I'm happy that and grateful as to what they've done for me. My oldest daughter, Margie, had a job in New Orleans that she gave up and moved back to New York to be with, closer to me. It was a big sacrifice that she's made, and the girls have made other sacrifices as well. But as I said, there's nothing more gratifying to a parent to see the way that the kids have supported, the girls have supported each other. It's really been quite something. Look, it may sound strange for a guy that has a grade 4 glioblastoma to say this, but I have a great life. I have a wonderful family. I have a wonderful extended family. I have a tremendous number of friends of mine going back to when I was 2 years old. I have a great job that brings a lot of satisfaction and a lot of pleasure to me. That's also a great challenge. And so simply put, I want to go on living my life. I want to see my family. I want to see my friends. I want to spend time with them. I want to do my job up to my ability for as long as I can do that. And hopefully that's a long time. And so that's really what I've tried to do. I don't know if I've been 100% successful, but that's what I've really tried to do. It sort of just kind of happened. I didn't expect necessarily to be as public about this as I was. Given the nature of my position, I felt I needed to tell the players, and there are about 1,200 of them. I needed to tell the agents that represent those players, and there's another 300 or 400 of them. And once you start to tell 1,500 people, we decided we better tell the press, I guess. And the response that I got, the outpouring of support that I got from so many sources was remarkable. And people that worked for different advocacy organizations for cancer came to me and offered their assistance. And it just seemed natural to help them out, whether it was Voices Against Brain Cancer, whether it's Stand Up to Cancer, whether it's your organization. You know, if I'm fortunate enough that there's something that I can do that can help somebody else who has a condition like this, you know, that's a great thing to do. But it wasn't like I said, okay, I should do this. It just sort of happened once I saw the tremendous kindness that was coming my way from so many people. And I realized how important that was to me. I said, you know what? If in whatever way possible I can help somebody out, I should do that. Well, I don't think a lot about the future. I mean, the future right now is, you know, my wife and I go to New Orleans late every April for the Jazz Festival, and that's the future as we sit here on April the 2nd. In terms of 3, 5, 10 years from now, I really don't think about it. And some people say, well, how can that be? You know, you've been given a diagnosis and a prognosis. That's a serious one. And the answer is sort of what you suggested at. As corny as it sounds, I don't take tomorrow for granted. I try to live every day to its fullest, knowing that I could wake up tomorrow with a new symptom or with something going on that could be a game changer. And so I try my best to find whatever meaning, joy, and beauty there is in any given day, and go on from there. I mean, we plan short-term things like trips or work-related things, but 3, 5, 10 years from now, I don't really think about that. Never underestimate the power of people. You may feel poorly, you may feel mentally that it's too difficult to face people. I'd urge people to do your best to get out there and see your loved ones and see your friends and family. It's so energizing to do that. Second, I do think it's important, whether you're a spiritual person or not, I think it's important to spend time with your own thoughts. I do that a lot with reading. You may do it with conversations with individuals. You may do it by writing. You may do it through, if you're an artistic person, I'm not, but you may do it through expressions. But I think it's really important to try to come to grips with your own thoughts. And third, as I've said previously, you know, enjoy the moment. It's really, really important to do that. What I've been able to do is get to a point where I really have no fear of what is coming my way from a health perspective. It's either going to be good or it's going to be bad or it's going to be in between, but it's going to be. Once you overcome the fear of your condition, then you have the opportunity to really enjoy life. And as I said, my mantra is I only look for 3 things. I look for meaning, I look for beauty, and I look for joy. And I look for them every single day. And maybe you say that's a lot to ask, but I don't think that's too much for anyone to ask of a way to live their life.